Okay, let's take that last lesson a step further. What we did is we went in and we created a new just a little piece of line inside of here, and I actually had an error when I first created it. It said line segment was too small. I'm not sure where it was snapping to, but all I did was I went in and created a new line inside of there. Once again, if you type TL on the keyboard, it turns your thin lines on and off. This is what will more or less plot, and this is just easier to work with, TL on the keyboard. It also has some effect on how that looks downstream when you load it into the project. So let's say we wanted to do this. Let's say we take this annotation family. We do have it loaded in our 3D family, which only shows up when we're in a floor plan view. Okay, even though the symbol itself is placed in what appears to be, an elevational view. Okay, so it's placed flat on here, but it's viewed when you look this way. Kind of weird, but that's the way it is. So watch what we're going to do. We want to have a variation. What I want to be able to do is way down the line here in the project. If I go in this project, I can pick on here and there's properties. So if I go to the properties of that family, I can click on there, and you'll notice that we have the new one, the DG Duplex, and we have two different types. And those types, what they do is they turn on and off different parameters or change different parameters. So all that really happens is if you do select this and you go edit type, you'll see that the standard has nothing in the label and the GFI has something filled in. That's the only difference, and that's more or less preset back here in the family before you even reload it in here. So all you have to do here is change the type or pick it off of here, and it updates. So let's say we want to do something similar, except for we want to create a version of this where we can say, okay, we're going to take this, bring it in here, and we want to be able to have the two-line receptacle and maybe a third line, meaning it's a 220 volt instead, right? So we want to have a 220 switch. So we want to make it so we can pick on here, go to the properties, and go in here and change it to be a 220, and all of a sudden the third line shows up. If it's a GFI or a standard, then the middle line doesn't show up. Okay, does that make sense? So that's what we'll do. Watch. Back here in the annotation family, we're going to create a new parameter. So we're going to go click in here to make this current, and then we're going to go up and pick this button, family types. Okay, we haven't been in here yet, and there's only one label in there, one parameter, and it's called label, which is the value of this. We're going to add in a new parameter into this annotation family, add, and inside of there we're going to call it, 220 volt. Okay, and it is going to be a type parameter, which means that it is going to be saved in the type rather than to be able to change it on any instance. We want to have a new type. Okay, and again, we've talked more about types and instance parameters. Type is going to make it so that it creates its own type over there, and it is going to be what is called a yes/no type. So 220 is the name, type is the specification, discipline is common. I've seldom changed that. Type of parameter is a yes/no, and we're going to group it under the general information when it gets listed over here. Okay, so have a look at this. Okay, that's our parameter. 220, type, common, yes/no, general. Hit OK. There it is. Okay, and by default the yes/no is set to be yes, and we hit OK, and we're done. So in this annotation family, we've created a new parameter, and it's called 220 volt. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is watch. I'm going to pick on this middle line, and when I go there, it's going to say that line is visible in the family. If I take this off, that line will be here, but it won't show up anywhere ever because it's not turned on. So I'm going to leave it on by default, but what I'm going to do is there's a little magic button over here, and I'm going to make the value of that, whether it's on or not, to be the parameter 220 volt. that parameter I made. Hit OK, and I'm done. Okay, so just a quick recap. I went in here, I said add, I made a new parameter inside of here, set up that information, and it was called 220 volt, and then I hit OK. That was it. Next, I picked on this line. I went to the visibility, which is now grayed out. To the far right, there's a little square button. Boom, I wish it was more prominent. And inside of there, the visibility control of that object is going to defer to whatever the value is for this parameter when I go into my project. Watch. Hit OK, and I'm done. Now I need to save my annotation family. I hit save. When I do save here, because this is my current window, that's the one that gets saved. It doesn't save these guys, it just saves this one over here. Okay, so now I've saved this, and now I'm going to say load to project off the modify tab, where I'm really not loading it to a project, I'm loading it to this family. Now watch what happens. Hit OK, and it's going to give me a warning. You're about to load a family. It already exists. What do you want to do? Overwrite the existing version. Overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. So if I've changed any of the values of the parameters, so in this case I haven't, so either one will do the same thing, but I'm just going to say overwrite the existing version. Okay? Now that's inside of here. Doesn't look any different. Okay, but the difference is this. What happens is now when I pick on this little annotation guy in this family, there's a new parameter in there under type called 220 volt. Okay, now what I have to do now, I'm just going to hit cancel here. Okay, I made a parameter in here called 220 volt, and I applied it to the visibility of this. Then I loaded it into here. Now that I'm inside of here, I'm actually in this to get a parameter to transfer from nested to here, I actually have to recreate that same parameter here and assign the value of it back to this guy. So watch. I'm going to, inside of either one of these windows, it doesn't matter because they're the same file, I'm going to create a new parameter in this file. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to add a regular parameter, and I'm going to give it the same name. It doesn't have to have the same name, by the way, but it sure is less confusing if you do give it the same name. Exactly the same type. It is a yes, no, and it's going to be grouped under general. And hit OK. I've made another parameter. Boom. So this file has a parameter with the same name and the same properties, and this file has the exact same parameter. But watch what I'm going to do. Now I'm in this view. I'm going to pick on this object, which is this annotation family, and I'm going to go to its type properties because I made it a type parameter, and inside of there I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go over to the 220 just like I did with my visibility here, and pick this little button and assign it to the parameter 220 in this family. Okay, this 220 parameter was from the original one. This 220 is in this one, so all I'm doing is passing it forward. Very good lesson here. Hit OK. Now this is done, and I can just squish this down a little bit and hit OK. Click out. Okay, so inside of here I have a parameter called 220 volt. Good. I can go modify that if I want. Pick on here and I can see those values again. If you want to change these, you have to delete it by going in here and saying remove and then add it back again. Add it in again. You can't modify all of this. These two are kind of one-time chance. These two you can change. So I made a parameter in there. Then I took this guy and I took the visibility of it and assigned it to that parameter that was in here. Okay. Then I loaded it, saved it, loaded it into here. Inside of here I made the exact same parameter called 220. And if I pick on here I can modify that. Looks the same. Okay. And then I took this guy and picked on it. And then I went into edit type and took that parameter that is made back inside of here, and I assigned it to this one here, which is the one that's inside of here. Hopefully not too confusing. Hit OK, hit OK. So one parameter, the parameter controls the visibility of this, and then the value of that was deferred to the parameter inside of here. And now you can guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to do save. Okay, let me just exit this, move it over. And now that I've saved this one, I'm going to say load to project. I'm going to load it into project 3, hit OK. And it's going to ask me to overwrite, and I'm going to say overwrite the existing version and the parameter values, and hit OK. Now, I did forget one step, but that's okay. So I'm going to pick down inside of here, and if I click on this guy, and I go to the properties in the project, and I go into edit type, I'm going to see that under general, okay, 220, I'm going to check that off and hit OK, and click out, and it's going to disappear. The only problem is I want to create an entirely new type. Okay, what it did was it turned it off in this one, and it turned it off in this one. Okay, but it didn't turn it off in these guys. I'd have to go in here and say edit the type and do the same thing and turn that off and hit OK, and then click out, and it would disappear in there. Okay, so that may be what you want. I don't know, but that's not quite what I want. So I'm going to leave this project just the way it is. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the family and realize I missed one small step. So inside of here, I'm going to go up to my family types and pick on there. Now, you see what we have? We have standard and GFI. Okay, again, with standard, the label is blank. With GFI, the label is blank. But with both of them, the 220 is turned on because this got introduced after the fact. There's our new parameter right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new type, not a new parameter. I'm going to say add a new type, and I'm going to say new type, and it's going to be called the 220. I keep using the same name. I shouldn't, because actually I'll write the word volt on here because I don't want you to get it confused with what is a type and what is a parameter. And then hit OK. So my 220 is going to have the 220 on with nothing in the label. Watch. My GFI is going to say GFI, but I don't need the 220. And my standard is going to have nothing in here, and I don't need the 220. Now I'm going to have 3 different types, and each type has the opportunity to change the values of these parameters. And you're starting to say, oh my goodness, I'm starting to see some power in here. So it doesn't matter what state I leave this. I can hit apply, and it'll apply that. So if I want to test them out, I can say show me the 220. Good. Show me the GFI. Good. Show me the standard. Good. So this is called flexing the model. So I hit OK. Now inside of this family file, I have to save it. Take note where you're saving it. And then I say load to project. Load it back up to project 3. I'm going to say overwrite the family and the parameters. And then I'm going to close this off and slide this over and pick out. Now what I have is a whole new type. I'm going to pick on here and pull this wall over a little bit. Use my shift key to keep it nice and straight. Okay. So now if I actually go and pick on here and I say create similar, which is, give me one of these, and I look at my properties, I'm going to see that I have 3 different types now. Under my DG family, I have a 220, I have a GFI, and a standard. If I bring in a 220, I pull it in, it's going to look like that. Escape, escape. Okay, I'm going to bring back my project browser. View, user interface, project browser. And let's take this 3D guy and close it down. And I'm just going to make a little bit of room here. And pull this guy over. I need better resolution in my screen here. And pull this guy over a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm doing myself a whole lot of good here. Not too bad. Pick in here. I don't need that to be so big. So I just wanted to show you here, if I go into this project file and I go to my project browser down to families, there's the original one that I had. Okay, then when I saved and renamed and brought it in, this is the new one, the DG one, and if I hit the plus, there's a 220, a GFI, and a standard. So in a project, I can go in here now, pick on here. Okay, how you bring in a component depends on you. You can copy and paste, you can drag and drop, you can use your create similar button. So the key is now I have a 220 and I can bring it in, place it there. I have a GFI preset, I can bring it in, place it there. That needs a little bit of work still, and I can bring my standard in and place it there. Okay, escape. Now I'll double click on here and it'll maximize that view for us, make it a little easier on the eyes. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 different types there, and we can change them, you know, as we please. I can, once they're in there, I can pick on here and say create similar if I want another one. Okay, I can pick on here and I can go to my type selector and, you know, change it to be a different type just by picking on here, however you please. If you want to go back and modify it, all you have to do is pick on here. Even if those windows are open or not, you simply say edit family and it goes back and reopens that family inside of here, and then we can click on here and say edit family, and now we're right back into this guy. Now let's make a quick change. Let's take this guy and move it to here. Click out. That's all we wanted to do. We're going to go save, load to project, load it up into our DG family, overwrite everything, puts it in like that, save it here, load it into our project 3, hit OK, overwrite everything and the parameters, and in it goes. Okay, so you can now quickly go back and forth and make those changes. Now, interesting, when I said overwrite the parameters, it actually cleared that label of the GFI. Let's do something. I'm going to undo that. Okay, bring that back. I'm going to pick this guy and say edit family, and inside of here I'm going to say reload to project, but I'm not going to overwrite the parameters, just overwrite the version. So my GFI is okay. This guy is a standard and this guy is a standard. Okay, so I want to take this guy and turn him into a 220, and then I'll see the newer version of that inside of there. Okay, so you can kind of go back and forth. You don't have to tile your windows. I like to tile them because it's easier to just go back and forth, especially if you have a nice big screen. But if you don't, you can always, even though whether the family's open or not, you can just go edit family. It goes inside here and opens it. If you're inside of there and you want to go to a 3D view, you can pick on your 3D view, etc. Okay, to edit the annotation family, you have to look at the reference level, and then depending on your scale, you pick on here, and then you go back in here and say edit the family, make your change however you want, click out, save it, load it up to the family, hit OK, overwrite it, save it, load it to the project. If it starts to get boring and annoying, then I have done my job at teaching you what you need to do. So we're going to kind of continue to do more of this kind of back and forth stuff, and we're also going to try to fix up our GFI guy so that it doesn't kind of hit our wall.